But then it said it was Tanaka's favorite thing, and I was like, never mind. Never mind. You're so right. We needed a sumo wrestling one. Hello, and welcome back to You and Idol Precure, episode 33. And we certainly have an episode this week. First and foremost, though, we're gonna go through the letters that are assigned to all the girls. And we have Katine now. I just realized it's their name with N at the end. I can actually remember their fairy names this time. It wasn't that hard. But Katine sorts the letters with miraculous ease, which, by the way, the letters are low-key screaming trans rights. We love that. We need something this episode. They gotta give us something, and we'll get that. And after our letters have been sorted and we are on a conversation about the appreciation of fans and how fans keep you motivated to going, we get an unusual letter. This one from a familiar character. Mr. Kyuta from episode 1 is coming back to be the theme of this episode. They do a bit here where they try to, like, acknowledge the fact that Precure and Kyuta don't sound that much alike. I kind of am glad that they're acknowledging that in the series, because I think that went over my head. Like, I heard what they were saying, and I was like trying to guess what the bit was when I watched it, because I think I watched it without subs the first time, where I was like, there's clearly some kind of mistake that they're making where they think he's Precure but he's not. I didn't realize it was the name, because I also kind of sat there and was like, Kyuta doesn't sound that much like Precure. And so I'm glad that they actually acknowledged that, because I was like, is this a moment where I'm just like, I know I don't speak Japanese and I don't know that much Japanese, but I at least can pick up on the wordplay if it's going on there. And this one, they're like, it's kind of a stretch. And I was like, okay, I feel a little vindicted here. I feel a little validated. But this episode then proceeds us, since it's the Kyuta one, and if you've forgotten, he's the sumo wrestler. They're like, this is the ideal episode to teach children about sumo wrestling. I'll be honest, this is only bothering me because one of my greatest nitpicks with Precure as a franchise, which they've been better about, but something that Precure has historically done has been, ironically enough, not a fantastic children's show, in the sense that it doesn't do what a lot of children's shows, especially children's shows that behave like this, typically do, where they sit there and they're like, we're gonna be educational. We're gonna teach you about the theme of the season. And a lot of seasons don't do that. I think the only season where we actually had some educational portion to it was Wonderful Precure thus far. And a little bit of Idol's teaching a little bit about idol culture. But, like, in terms of useful education stuff, they typically don't do anything. And in this episode, they're like, we're gonna teach kids about sumo wrestling. And I'm like, the things that Precure magically feels motivated that it must educate the youth on is always funny to me. It's always particular, but go off. Teach everybody what a sumo wrestler. I also think it's a good use of the fairies. I was kind of curious once we, like, decided to have these guys redeemed and, like, explain their backstory as fairies, how their existence is going to be for the remainder of the series. And honestly, it's been a pretty decent balance, besides the stuff that I don't like that I'm not gonna get into. Their existence has been kind of nice, because I feel like if they were more present in the series, it'd be too many characters, and it'd be kind of annoying. But these guys have pretty low screen time, but when they do have screen time, they're useful. Like, for example, here, instead of, like, just having one of our typical, like, puppeteer animated situation trying to explain something, they get a whole animated scene where the two of them explain what sumo wrestling is with visuals and animation. So I do think that they're useful in that regard. And you know, I was sitting here being like, why are we having an episode talking about sumo wrestling and talking about the backstory for sumo wrestling? But then it said it was Tanaka's favorite thing, and I was like, never mind. Never mind. You're so right. We needed a sumo wrestling one. If it's for Tanaka. If it's for our manager Tanaka, then go right ahead, sweetheart. Talk about sumo wrestling all you want. I was mistaken. That was my bad. In the meantime, Kyuta has written a letter to the girls and explained that he's become a super fan of Precure and finds them incredibly inspirational, while also noting that he's a sumo wrestler, as we all kind of knew. And when the gang goes out and kind of discusses, like, how it was crazy that he's a fan after all this time, dude just shows up. He's like, that's me, in his very, like, nonchalant way. We also get the reminder that he low-key knows like 50% of our secrets here, because he already knows that Puridun can talk since the two of them got in the peach and like had a whole conversation when we tried to take him back. They also finally show us what the peach looks like inside. Like, we get to see what this thing looks like when it's actually traveling between the dimensions, because before it was just like a weird larger than normal peach, but surely not large enough to carry these people that just floated down the river. Now we're going through this like spectral landscape and we're going back to Kiriki land. Like, it makes a little bit more sense here. I also like that he's so polite that he took his shoes off. We can't be having those dirty shoes mucking up the poor peach thing over here. But yeah, he knows that like Puridun can talk, and he's like, yeah, that talking stuffed animal, what a crazy scenario that was, in his, again, overly nonchalant manner. And Puridun has this was such a good delivery, by the way. The voice acting here was phenomenal for what is probably one of the funniest moments thus far in the franchise, of these two talking, these two head empty characters talking, and then Puridun actually being able to realize that this was a mistake. Like, we always wonder what it would be like if Puridun was the smarter person in the room, and boy howdy do we get it here. Like, it's a little satisfying when Puridun realizes that she's messed up. It is a pretty good bit. And then he expresses that he would like to become a Cure. So shout out to Cure Rikishi over here. Move aside, Puridun. What else do we have? We like had Cure Fire. We had the Gorilla Cure. There's so many so many joke cures. We've got a new one. Welcome in our sumo wrestler Cure. I think he's the first Cure in history to have like actual Japanese / hiragana in his name, unless I am mistaken. So shout out to that. But yeah, he has decided to become a Precure, no longer wants to be a sumo wrestler. And also, he's been a long time fan of Precure. Like, shout out to him being number 8. I mean, do we know who 3 through 7 are at this point? We know who 1 and 2 are. Are we gonna get, like, the top 10 fans? Are they all going to be identified throughout the last 17 episodes we have? Anyways, the girls were like, whoa, wait a second. I don't think this dude can be a Cure. Which is kind of funny, because some of us wanted him to be Cures the first episode. Don't know if I appreciate the change up on our impressions here. Like, let the man cook. To which Tanaka introduces himself very professionally and is like, I am the manager of Precure, because he would swoop in. He does attempt to tell Kurikyuta that the cures are taken. We do not have any more positions for idol cures, but he kind of misses that bit. And instead we get to see him cook. And I mean that very literally. He makes mochi that looks really gorgeous. And then he makes, like, some hot pot. Like, I'm sorry, sir. You should quit sumo wrestling. Be a chef. Like, look at... You can cook in a very literal sense. Like, I think you should pivot your career path. This is great stuff right here. Like, do you understand having the delicacy of making all this food as delectable as you are while also controlling your strength? I think you're really cooking here. But the girls do point out that his display of food activities is not really Cure material. So he starts to sing in the way Uta does, and it's kind of cute because he does it with the ladle instead of the spoon that she normally uses. It's fun. It's a good joke. However, we get the reveal of what kind of is the crux of the problem. Bro is injured. We've also had this little kid running around stalking them throughout the episode. He reveals himself to be Chikara, and he is Mr. Sumo's numero uno fan. Dai fan des. And explains that he's caught wind that Mr. Kurikyuta is trying to quit being a sumo wrestler, and he will not have any of that because he is the #1 fan. And he's like, no, don't do that. And then we get the sad TM backstory where we get the reveal that he's been injured and it's setting him back. And if he, like, waits to heal, he'll be really behind. He'll have to redo all his training. All of the peers that he had will move ahead of him and he's not really picking it up. So he's like, it's better if I just quit and, pivot maybe into something else that I enjoy. And I'm like, Homare? From Haguto Precure? Your plotline's being stolen? Help? The plagiarism? And not as good? I see how it is. We gotta recycle stuff. There's so many seasons of Precure, we have to recycle the same plotline. To which this leads him to get transformed into the monster of the week, which does freak out little Chikara, but my man Tanaka coming in for the save. Get that kid out of there so our girls can transform and fight. And I see that the delicious field has returned once more. So I think we already figured that this was going to be a staple, but it is here once more. I'm kind of surprised that it was Jogi this week. and not Chokirine. I'm surprised that we're not trying to wind down her plotline, and even from the previews of next episode, to be fair, they don't think they show us which villain is the villain of the week for next week, but I'm surprised we're not addressing her and we're still kind of like sitting on Jogi. I wonder if they're doing the same thing that they did in Wonderful, where we take that last female villain and just kind of like drag her to the finish line and have her like maybe be a pivotal change in trying to convince the villains at the last second to be good people. I don't know. I do think it's kind of odd that we're not addressing that. I'm also just a little miffed, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I wish we weren't having such filler-esque episodes at this point in the series, because it feels like next episode's gonna be in the same boat. Not super loving that we're doing that, but it's kind of inevitable. The problem is they're gonna do the thing that they've been doing for a couple of seasons that I haven't enjoyed, and they're gonna shove all the plot in the last few episodes when we could have spread it out a little bit better. We could, have a plot episode, have a break, have a plot episode, have a break. We've had so many character building episodes and like a little nugget of potential plot, but like, I don't know what we're doing here. But we do, interestingly enough, have Jogi kind of sit here and be like, I don't get why you guys are behaving the way you do. The typical villain thing. And then it makes sense that Zakyun and Idol are the ones to speak up and talk about the importance of fans, specifically because they're the two characters that had the most connections to Kirikuta. And so both of them do the typical spiel of like, fans are really important, they motivate us, and we've got to save this guy who's been our big fan, we got to give back what he's given to us. And this does shake Jogi a little bit, like he doesn't have a typical villain of like, that's stupid, being heroes and caring about other people is lame, bye. He kind of stumbles a little bit after they say that, which is interesting. I'm curious to see where this character goes, but again, they give us like the bare minimum. So it'll be interesting if he's the villain of the week next week, or if he just was here and then he's not next. We'll see. We'll see what we do with him. In the meantime, we save Kirikuta. He ends up deciding very quickly, he's like, JK, I've been purified. I feel like I should, get back up on the saddle and resume sumo. And I guess the implication is that this is a time skip and he's healed. Shout out to Tanaka. He's got 2 signs because he's a fan. And all's well that ends well. Not a particularly, not the most compelling or deep Precure episode. Kind of a bummer that this is a little bit of a reused plot line that unfortunately did have a twin sister version of this that is phenomenally more compelling. I mean, you can't really compete with the way they handled it with Homore in Hakuto. That's just insanely superior. But not a bad one. I think just talking about the importance of fans and fan motivation, and just I liked the multi-dimensional level of like, he's a fan of Precure and was inspired by them, but somebody's a fan of him, and that kind of like pushes him to stay motivated, that it's not just for him, but there's other people cheering him on and care about his success. I think it had a cute moral. It's a nice, simple episode, and it looks like we'll be on the simplicity train for at least the next one, and then after that, I think there's the infamously anticipated date episode, which could go so many of different ways, but that's 2 weeks from now, and so I won't worry about it until then, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!